Welcome to the show. Glad to have you with us here today. It is a joyous Tuesday for all of us. Quite frankly, I mean, let's just call it what it is. It's a winter. I guess it's officially winter now, right? Is it winter? Or are we still fall? Where are we right now? I guess we still got it like a month to go before winter officially gets here, right? Even though it feels like winter.
I think so.
Yeah.
December 21st starts winter.
I had my seasons confused for a minute. I'm going to go totally off track as we start this show today. We got a lot of good stuff, I think, to talk about. We're going to talk about some college football playoff stuff. We've got some Shamrock Up, Shamrock Down, like we usually do on Tuesday, but we're abbreviating it a little bit so we can get some playoff talk in at the front. But first, I have an all-important question. I think maybe, like anyone who works in any office or, whatever kind of place probably got, a kitchen or a break room or something like that. We've got a little kitchen right across the hall from the studio here at Sports Radio WSBT, and I don't venture in there very often. When I do, I usually just grab, like a cup, like if I forget my cup from home with my ice water that I usually have, handy with me. But for whatever reason, I went in there today and I cracked open the refrigerator. I don't know what they're doing here during the day because I only come in, with, a little bit before the show starts. I do the show, I edit some things, and then I leave. In the refrigerator, these are among the things that I found. An opened 12-pack of Bud Light, of which at least 5, if not 6, had been consumed, an open bottle of wine, 2 other full bottles of wine, a bottle of some kind of hard cider was in there, a meat and cheese tray, like a party tray, and a purse.
There was a purse in the fridge.
There was a purse in the refrigerator. Yes.
Did they have a party recently without you?
I don't know. I'm thinking maybe there was. It seems like maybe someone was getting down here in the building during the day, and I didn't know about it. But
there's a lot of stuff. I thought you were going to go down the route that there was like some really nasty food in there.
Well, I didn't like dig around and all. There were like other bags and condiments and, like the things that you would expect, like big things of coffee creamer and all that kind of stuff. But the purse is, I think, what surprised me the most. And when you found, with all the other beverages that were near it, I guess, I don't know. You spent part of your weekend in Pittsburgh at the Notre Dame Pittsburgh football game on Saturday. Any experiences that you'd like to share with our listening audience before we really get going?
I don't know if you're baiting me into this or what.
You can talk about whatever you want to talk about. I'm just I know it got a little bit lively in the stands.
You're just setting the stage.
So yeah.
So,
I did find it interesting that, when you were telling the story via text to Vince and I, Vince pulled the dad right away and tried to blame you for everything that happened. So
what did you do to this? What did you do to that? What did you do to this?
What'd you do to deserve it?
Like we haven't heard Vince speak at a sporting event before.
Yes, seriously. Like all the whatever, when he was leaving Ohio Stadium a couple of years ago. I remember that experience. Now he was cussing everyone in his path as he made his way out of there.
So Pittsburgh was great. Started our day tailgating, found a nice kind of parking garage across the bridge, tailgated for a good amount, and then around 11 o'clock walked over to the stadium, walked in. When we first sat down, due to the tailgating, we were feeling a little bit toasty. Game was nice. Our view was great. I had Notre Dame fans to my left, Notre Dame fans to my right, Notre Dame fans behind me, and Pittsburgh fans in front of me. At some point during the end of the game, third, fourth quarter, the lady turned around and asked, this was a Pittsburgh fan, asked my wife if I had any redeeming qualities.
What did said wife say? What was her response to that?
She said he has many redeeming qualities.
Oh, there you go. At least she stuck up for you.
So
no matter how wrong she may have been. I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm not blaming anyone.
So I would say I made 2 mistakes during the game. When I was cheering for Notre Dame, I maybe used a couple choice words like
which fans will do. Let's be honest.
Go, or like nice freaking play, or stuff like that.
But worth noting, if your text was true, no children in the area, like
no
all
children
adults,
in the air, all
right?
adults.
So should all be able to handle whatever language comes your way if you're at a football game, right?
Yeah. So
especially if you're not directing it at anyone in particular, like you weren't yelling at obscenities.
No, I was not like freak that. I was like cheering in excitement. And so at one point there was the guy next to me to my left was a great guy. He was probably a 60, 70-year-old Notre Dame fan. Bought me a couple beers throughout the day. That's how you know I really wasn't doing anything crazy. When someone's buying you free beer at a sporting event, you're probably doing something right. So
yeah.
He at one point I leaned over to him and I said, "Am I really being that bad?" Like, and he said, "You've been cussing a little bit." And I said, "Yeah, but we're at a sporting event, And I think what really rubbed this person the wrong way is at one point, I think I was like, "Well, what do you expect when Pat Narduzzi's your coach?"
Oh, I love it. I love it.
I said, "Did you expect anything else when, Narduzzi's been running his mouth all week?" I basically said, Pitt is playing bad because Pitt's coach is bad. So there should be no real surprise about this. And that set a lot of people off. Yeah.
You just were like, was it like a tidal wave of Pitt fans directing their venom at you? Like, did it come hard and fast, harder and faster than the actual Pitt Panthers on the field, I might add? Like,
I think that the overall, the lady was having a bad day because Pitt was having a bad day, and I was there quite opposite, having a great day, being vocal about having a great day, having a great time. I had great seats. I sent you a picture of my seats, great seats. My wife was with me. She was having a good time. Everyone was having a good time. It probably didn't help too that I think we were in like a season ticket area, and I think a lot of people sold their tickets, and I think a lot of those people were Pitt fans.
Yeah, that's how it goes. Sometimes that happens. Just ask Notre Dame fans. There's like a whole line of people that want to prevent season ticket holders from selling their tickets to people from the other fan base and all that kind of stuff. But you did have really good seats. You were right at the 50, so they must have been season ticket holders, and you were a bunch of Notre Dame guys and gals dropped in right in the middle of it. So good for you. Good times.
Yeah, like I said, it was a great time. And I think the thing that has to be really stated here is at no point was I just like, F you effing, this and that. I was just cheering on my team. Notre Dame was shellacking them.
Typical fan stuff. You weren't. It's not like you were that fan getting up in Draymond Green's face, right. calling him a woman.
I will say though, when someone asks you that question, it kind of sticks with you. Like I've been thinking about what she asked me ever since, and I was like, "Am I a bad person? Do I have any redeeming qualities?" It's been sticking with me all weekend, even though you think one thing of yourself, but obviously how you're perceived is another. And when another person asks you that, you start questioning how you're perceived by everyone else.
Well, maybe you'll clean yourself up. Maybe you'll clean your act up. You should have just said, "I'll see you in church tomorrow, honey."
So I had a great weekend.
I'll be the one in the front pew. All right. Well, good times. Pitt is the past, and we've got Notre Dame, of course, in Syracuse coming up this week. It's a 3:30 kickoff at Notre Dame Stadium. The game day show begins at 11 a.m. from the Linebacker and right here on Sports Radio WSBT. You can hear that. I'm awaiting the guest list, but it'll be from 11 to 2:30 at the Linebacker. So we've got more college football playoff rankings coming out tonight. Vince and I touched on some of the stuff last night. The pervasive theory has been that if Notre Dame wins out, the Fighting Irish are going to be in the college football playoff. They were number 9 in last week's playoff rankings after opening at number 10 2 weeks ago. We had an Oklahoma upset of Alabama last week, and those two teams, along with Notre Dame now, all have 2 losses. So I think we're all, kind of waiting to see, and everyone has their own predictions in terms of where the Irish are going to be when the college football playoff rankings come out later tonight, the third set of college football playoff rankings. Do you think Notre Dame is more likely to bump up to number 8, stay at number 9, drop to number 10? What do you think happens with them when this new set of rankings come out?
I think Notre Dame is going to land at number 10 this week. I think Oklahoma and Alabama will both stay in front of Notre Dame.
I do too. And, as of right now, Oklahoma's behind Notre Dame. So Oklahoma would leapfrog.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was like. It's a given Oklahoma's going to leapfrog. And I think Alabama remains in front of them.
Bernie is very optimistic. He sees the Irish at number 7. So I'm curious who Notre Dame is moving ahead of if that happens. I don't see them moving ahead of Alabama. And again, I think that they're going to have a hard time fending off Oklahoma. I went and found, a lot of just different data points. And here's the selection committee uses a process that basically some of the factors that they look at: strength of schedule, head-to-head competition, comparative outcomes of common opponents, obviously if you have common opponents, as well as other things such as the unavailability of players and coaches that may affect a team's performance. So none of these teams have those things to consider. Like Swandong is saying they're going to move ahead of Ole Miss. How is that going to happen considering Ole Miss keeps winning? They'd
have a better chance to jump Oregon.
Yeah, I think so as well. But I don't think they're going to jump Oregon because Oregon keeps winning as well. If you compare Notre Dame, Alabama, and Oklahoma, and I've also got Miami in here, but strength of record, strength of schedule are 2, pretty big factors. Notre Dame's strength of record is 12. Alabama's is 8. Oklahoma's is 8. So they are behind both of those 2 teams on strength of record. Strength of schedule, Notre Dame is number 29. Alabama is number 4. Oklahoma is number 10. So again, they're trailing both of those two teams there. Now, they remain ahead of Miami in both strength of record, 12 versus 16, and strength of schedule, 29 versus 43, big in their favor. The factor that you have to look at, I think, with Alabama is, okay, Alabama's got a big win over Georgia, one of the bigger wins this season. They've also got a quality win over Vanderbilt. But they also, of all of these teams, have one of the worst losses to Florida State. So how much do you think that factors in Alabama when they're discussing Notre Dame versus Alabama tonight?
Yeah, I think that you can't hold that against Alabama, or else Miami would be held against Notre Dame. Those are both losses early in the season. Alabama obviously had a new quarterback, just like Notre Dame. So I think Notre Dame's loss in that regard is better. Like losing to Miami is better than Florida State, but they both happened the same week. So I don't think that it's going to be held against Bama because of how early.
You think it's much more forgivable, even though they still do have a loss more recently to Oklahoma.
Yeah, but Oklahoma is going to be in the top 10. It's like, so you have, let's just call, Notre Dame's loss to Texas A&M is a better look than Bama's loss to Oklahoma. I think Notre Dame's loss to Miami is a better look than Bama's loss to Florida State. But because of when they happen and because Oklahoma is going to be in the top 10 now, I just think they're going to value that win over Georgia more than anything Notre Dame has done.
Interesting. Well, some other data points, like you look at Notre Dame's worst loss, it is to Miami. And I'm not saying it was a bad loss. I'm just saying, what is their worst loss? It's, Miami is worse than Texas A&M. For Alabama, it's Florida State. Oklahoma, like Notre Dame, has a couple quality losses. They've lost to both Texas and Ole Miss, so their worst loss is to a 3-loss Texas team right now. Miami, of course, has quality win over Notre Dame, also a semi-quality win over South Florida. Those are probably, after Notre Dame, South Florida or Florida, like those are the two best, the next best wins that they have. But they have two bad losses in comparison to all the other two loss teams. That's why, in addition to their strength of record and strength of schedule, find themselves where they are ranked, no matter how much they complain about the head-to-head. They've got losses to SMU and Louisville, which as of right now are unranked teams. So there's no way around that for Miami. But again, like when you look at all of these different points, I don't see any way that Notre Dame stays ahead of Oklahoma. And I don't think that they're going to move ahead of Alabama. So I think that they're going to be number 10 when this ranking comes out. Did you have something to say before I go on from that?
Yeah, I think that first, I kind of want to acknowledge what you were talking about with Miami. Miami has two bad losses, like you said, and they happen later in the season. And I think most importantly for Miami is they're likely not even going to play for the ACC championship, let alone win it. Like I really like. There's a small chance that they do play for the ACC championship. There's a lot of work that needs to be done ahead of them, but that's something I could have seen as what could have catapulted Miami ahead of Notre Dame potentially if they did end up in the ACC championship and obviously winning it, because they would get that at-large bid. And then my second point would be, I think tonight is super pivotal for the conversation that we're about to have of Notre Dame controlling its own destiny, right? Because there is a big difference between 9 and 10 tonight. And I think that really changes the way that we go about our conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Because if they do drop to number 10, what's your concern then that they could end up getting squeezed out of the playoff field?
They don't take more
they've got 2 games
to get them.
Say that again. I think we had a little bit of a lag in our internet there.
If they're at 10, the ACC champ would be behind them and the group of 5 champ would be behind them. That leaves no room for error. It would just take one more at large and they would be out. If you're at 9, you get a 1-team cushion, basically.
Exactly. 10 is basically the floor for Notre Dame.
Cutoff.
That's as far as they can go because of what you said. The ACC champion and the group of 5 champion are going to occupy those 11 and 12 spots. So, I mean, whether it's Notre Dame or anybody else, 10 is as far as you can, be ranked and feel good. So, like when we talk about whether or not Notre Dame controls its own destiny, unfortunately they do not, because, like these next 2 games are against teams that are 6 and 14. So like they control what they control, and that is winning their next 2 games. And honestly, they need to keep winning pretty handily as well. There's like, they're just in a spot right now because of those losses. And then you're going to have Miami potentially breathing down their necks as well. I suppose if Miami were to catch them, that is like the only sort of allowable team that could catch them because of the fact that, go ahead.
I have 2 teams. If I'm Notre Dame, I'm concerned about 2 teams. And I think there's really 2 teams that could catch them or beat them out for that last at-large spot. And it's BYU and Miami. We can get into, specifics here in a little bit, but I think really everyone in front of them is in front of them and either is going to stay in front of them or fall behind. But BYU, and I think you have to look at, if you're Notre Dame, who's in the rearview mirror, who's on your tail in the rearview mirror. And I feel like right now BYU and Miami are them. And I think that when you're talking about controlling your own destiny, BYU is the team that could really wreck this whole thing.
Right. If they climb back in this, and if
they win the Big 12 championship and then in Texas Tech are at 1 and 2 losses, both of those teams could stay in front of Notre Dame.
Yeah, exactly. If BYU beats Texas Tech in the rematch, I don't think that's very likely based on the horrible, putrid offense that they had, that we saw a couple of weeks ago when they played the first time, but they're going to play again. So, like they play the games. If that happens, that would be really bad for Notre Dame. And again, that's why like they don't control their destiny at this point, because there are so many other factors going on. Now, I won't say no one thought that Oklahoma was going to beat Alabama. Upsets do happen. And that is typically, like we've always looked at this, and it's like, well, these things play themselves out as you go along. But Notre Dame just doesn't have enough juice to squeeze right now. They don't, because again, your next two opponents are 6-14. Syracuse is starting a freshman quarterback this week. Stanford is a dumpster fire still. So like, you're not going to impress anybody with what you do in those. It's not going to be enough to bump you up very much more. So tell you what, we're going to have to take a break, and we'll come back and we'll continue the playoff conversation. Coming up next with Jesse Stiers, I'm Sean Stiers, Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We continue Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat with IrishBreakdown.com. Sean Stiers, Jesse Stiers. Been talking if Notre Dame controls its better clear the screen on the YouTube side. If Notre Dame controls its playoff destiny with these latest rankings coming out, I'll make it relatively easy. If Notre Dame stays 9 or moves up to 8, yes. If they are sitting at 10 after the rankings come out, the answer is no, because then they can be caught and it's, like things are starting to squeeze. One of the questions is going to be how much value the committee places on a ranked win that Notre Dame just had, a decidedly lopsided ranked win. But, again, here are the resumes of Notre Dame, Alabama, and Oklahoma, the teams that Notre Dame is going to be competing against for these spots in the rankings, not just tonight, but for the next couple of weeks, assuming everyone keeps winning. Notre Dame has a strength of record of 12. Alabama's is 8. Oklahoma's is 10. Notre Dame's strength of schedule 29. Alabama's is 4. Oklahoma's is 10. So Alabama has better strength of record and strength of schedule than Oklahoma, but Oklahoma obviously just had the head-to-head win. Alabama also has one of the best wins this season with a win over Georgia in Athens. They also have a win over Vanderbilt. You compare that to Notre Dame's best 2 wins, USC and Pittsburgh. Oklahoma has the head-to-head over Alabama. They've also got a head-to-head over Michigan, which really is comparable to USC, and they've got a win over Tennessee. So I don't know, like last night, Indy Forever 72, who is, one of the bigger pessimists, I think, when it comes to this stuff with kind of how he's thought of it, like he says in the YouTube chat, they dropped to 10, regardless of how Bama's playing now. The Bama resume is better. What they need to start watching now is how close Miami is getting to them. If they get within a spot or two, that is bad. I agree, because again, the committee puts these teams in tiers of 6. And because Notre Dame has been a tier or even 2 tiers ahead of Miami in the rankings, Miami is inching up and they're getting closer to being in the same tier as Notre Dame. So if they end up in the same tier, that's when that head-to-head win is going to come into play for Miami. So that could potentially push Miami ahead of Notre Dame. But Indy Forever 72 last night was saying, "Oh, Sean, glad to see you coming to the dark side. You're joining in my pessimism." Basically, it's like I am, I'm not an eternal optimist. I find myself more in the pragmatic lane, whereas Indy Forever 72, tends to lean more to the pessimistic side, and there are others as well, and many others who are much more on the optimistic side. But like the optimists think that the pragmatic people are pessimists. The pessimistic people think that the pragmatic people are the optimists. And I definitely find myself more, in that pragmatic lane. Scott L. Esquire in the YouTube chat, who tends to be much more pessimistic, very, very bullish on Notre Dame. He says Pitt equals Texas. Notre Dame should be number 5 overall, behind only Ohio State, A&M, Indiana, and Georgia. We're talking about a loss in August, for crying out loud, Scott says. What do you think about that, Jess?
Yeah, I think that's wishful thinking. Notre Dame is grouped in with the 2-loss teams. All the 1-loss teams are in their own different grouping right now. I don't think Notre Dame is going to be jockeying with Ohio State, A&M, Indiana, Georgia, Oregon, Ole Miss. Like those teams, until they lose, Notre Dame is never going to catch, in my opinion. So I think you have to be focused on what teams are in Notre Dame's kind of grouping right now. Those 2-loss teams, or maybe even a 1-loss team like Georgia Tech, BYU. But the main concerns are Miami, Oklahoma, and Alabama today.
It's interesting, Scott, that you say you changed your attitude with what Notre Dame did Saturday. I mean, I realize Pitt was ranked. Are they really, like, all of those teams that end up in that 18, 17, 18 to 25, they're almost there by default because they've got to put somebody there. And I mean, look how interchangeable it is. It's week to week who ends up there, and so I'm not Do I think that USC is better than Pitt? Absolutely. Like, do I think that Pitt is horrible? Not by any means, but I think that they were totally outclassed by Notre Dame Saturday. So, it's hard for me to put too much stock in that, but the committee did rank them. So I'm going to be really curious to see what that does when the rankings come out. By the way, the selection show is at 8:30 tonight. It's going to be sandwiched in between the Kentucky, Michigan, and Kansas Duke basketball games on ESPN. So, yay. I love it. I love it when basketball happens. And, it seemed like every year the first game ends up going into overtime, and then the selection show ends up getting pushed back farther.
I think we've talked about really like the situations we've kind of been talking about is assuming everyone basically just wins the rest of their games. I think the situations that have to be talked about as well is Oregon plays USC still. That's a really big matchup. If USC can beat Oregon, that means Notre Dame is going to jump or move up at least one spot.
Maybe even two. Like that would be best case scenario, like for teams in front of Notre Dame right now, if USC can beat Oregon this weekend.
And then Oklahoma plays Missouri and LSU. While, not – and both those games are at home, so that works for Oklahoma as well. Is Missouri great? No. Is LSU great? No. But those are two solid teams. And like you said, like Oklahoma played a sloppy game and still beat Alabama. Like on paper, they shouldn't have won that game.
Mm-hmm.
BYU plays Cincinnati in Cincinnati this weekend. That's a huge game. If Cincinnati can knock off BYU, that would help Notre Dame out a lot. And to be quite honest with you, as much as we talk about Pat Narduzzi and the Pitt Panthers, them beating Miami the last game of the regular season,
that would be massive.
That would be huge. Yeah. We should all be massive Pittsburgh fans at this
Absolutely. Point. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. But, I do think that, crazier things have happened, and Salty, going back to that list of the criteria that the playoff committee uses, availability of players. Salty Virginia Pete says that negatively affects Miami because Carson Beck's been available for every game. Well, unfortunately, that didn't come into play in the first game, and Notre Dame was not able to affect him quite enough. One other metric, though, the FEI, the FRAMU efficiency index, Notre Dame is very strong there, and they rank number 6 overall, and that is the efficiency index of offense, defense, and special teams. Notre Dame number 11 in offense, number 5 defense, number 41 special teams. Texas Tech is number 7, 35 offense, number 1 defense, number 2 special teams. But Bama ranks behind Notre Dame, and Oklahoma is far behind Notre Dame there. Not far behind, but 2 spots behind, but offensively way behind Notre Dame because they rank number 46 offensively, and Miami is also a few spots behind Notre Dame. So like if you're looking at just how good, each facet of the game is for each team, Notre Dame actually stacks up pretty well there. So which fan base do you think is going to be the latest to direct their venom at Notre Dame after tonight is said and done? Like, who's going to be coming at Notre Dame next? Because it's been a different fan base every week, it seems like.
Yeah, I don't know how much will change tonight. I still think it'll be BYU and Miami predominantly. I think that Georgia Tech might potentially add to that list, but Georgia Tech is in control of their own destiny. Especially if they beat Georgia and go to the ACC championship game, Georgia Tech is almost a lock to get in. So I really don't see, maybe like Vanderbilt might jump on the train this tonight, but I think tonight is going to be maybe Bama fans too, if Notre Dame somehow stays in front of Alabama. I think they could also be on the list, but I still think it's going to be BYU and Miami because I think Notre Dame is going to stay ahead of both of those teams tonight. It's just a matter if they're going to be 9 or 10.
Miami's going to be coming on strong. BYU has a lot less to talk about after that stink fest that they put up in Lubbock a couple of weeks ago. But if Notre Dame is ahead of either Alabama or Oklahoma, which obviously a lot of Notre Dame fans think that they will be, one of those fan bases is going to be coming hard after Notre Dame.
So
if Notre Dame is ahead of, but I don't think that they will be. I think both of those teams are going to be ahead of Notre Dame.
Here's what I think Salty brought this up in the chat. Something I think about quite often. You get punished for beating a ranked team and then they become unranked.
Right.
Because had they won, like Navy and Pitt would still be ranked right now had they beat Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, like, I always wonder if that's taken into account. Teams that, like, probably would still be ranked if they had not lost to Notre Dame. And that goes for everyone, not just obviously specific to Notre Dame, but, like, I don't know how you can fault a team when you beat them while they're ranked and you beat them handedly and now they're no longer ranked.
The beat them handily, I guess, is what I would agree with you with, because like when you said, you beat them when you're ranked, like that goes to Oregon. What's their best win? It's hard to say at this point because it was supposed to be Penn State, and that's nowhere to be seen right now. But they obviously didn't beat them handily, but they did beat them on the road. But yeah. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll do some quick Shamrock Up, Shamrock Down. Did you have something to say first?
Nope.
Okay. So we will do that when we return. Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat, IrishBreakdown.com. Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat with IrishBreakdown.com continues. I'm Sean Stiers along with Jesse Stiers. Notre Dame and Syracuse Senior Day this Saturday at Notre Dame Stadium, 3:30 kickoff on the Notre Dame Radio Network, including the Odyssey app, AUDACY, and that means an 11 a.m. game day show live from the linebacker. Scott says Indiana's played 3 FCS teams. I'm sorry, Scott. You missed by 2 on that. They have played 1. Indiana State is an FBS, but Kennesaw State, who's the other one? Old Dominion are both FBS. But your point is still taken. Like you're playing 2 lower level FBS teams and an FCS team. You know, don't even get me started on the cream puff nature of Big Ten scheduling, especially Indiana. Like they are going out of their way. You know, they're again, falling back on the whole, we're playing 9 conference games. Okay, great. Good for you. Like when the bottom of your conference is even close to the middle of the SEC, maybe then we'll talk. Or even, quite frankly, the Big 12 at some points. Like that's just stop with how great your schedule is supposed to be. But I digress. Let's do some Shamrock Up, Shamrock Down for Notre Dame in the time we've got left here in this first hour. Jesse, anything you want to start with? I'll just throw it to you. You want to go like who's up the most?
Yeah, for me, Tay Johnson is the biggest Shamrock up right now.
Hard to argue.
Hard to argue. Continues to make impactful plays. Game-changing plays, creating turnovers. And in this last game, returned it all the way. I'm going to be quite honest with you. When Notre Dame took that pick 6 back and made it 14-0, I knew the game was over. I knew it was over.
Same boat. Here's Tay Johnson talking about that interception.
Just preparing myself for the game, going over the game plan with Coach Mickens and Coach Ash. So I kind of was prepared for it. I knew it was coming, and that led to me to be able to play fast and ultimately get a pick 6 for my team.
All right, so there's Tay Johnson talking about that, and I completely agree. Like you get hit with basically it was a 1-2 punch. The long run, the touchdown run by Jeremiah Love, his Heisman highlight, and then you get Tay Johnson with the pick 6. The game was over. It was 14-0, and the game was completely over. Pittsburgh just looked completely shell-shocked at that point, I thought.
Yeah. I remember turning to Naomi and I was like, well, the rest of this game is going to be fun. Because it was over.
That made the lady behind you pretty happy.
It was over at that point. I saw enough from Pitt on offense where I was like, yeah, they're not going to be able to do anything. And if Jeremiah Love is going to bust off a 55-yard run, and you're supposed to have one of the best run defenses in the country,
yeah,
it is going to be a long, long day.
Yep. I mean, that play, the Adon Schuler with
when I saw them hitting them over the middle, I was like, oh, that's how today is going to go.
That third down, rocket shot that he gave him. And Tay Johnson yesterday said that Adon Schuler 3 times he called him a fire starter after the game. So I love that. And it's like the fire that he lit under Notre Dame's belly with that rocket shot that he put on that Pitt wide receiver. Again, it's like from that, and then you give up the touchdown run, and then you give up the pick 6, and then Adon Schuler later on, safety. Like across the board, that secondary, when everybody is healthy, that's legit one of the top secondaries in the entire nation.
And that's where, I remember this. So people don't go back on it now. I said at the beginning of the season, after those losses to Miami and Texas A&M, I said Notre Dame's secondary is talented, but it's hurt and it's young right now.
Yeah.
Look at where they just needed to get repetitions together. Obviously, Tay Johnson probably wasn't going to be able to start on the road against Miami and at home against Texas A&M as a true freshman. He needed a little bit more time.
But do you know who's played the most snaps of anyone in Notre Dame's defense right now?
Probably Tay Johnson.
It is Tay Johnson.
And the reason is because with all these rotating injuries, Devontae Smith, some of their corners, Christian Gray, like Tay Johnson has filled the voids in the crack all season. When someone is hurt, his role like positions move around, but Tay Johnson is always there at the end of the day. So I thought he was fantastic. And like you said, between Leonard Moore, Don Schuler, Tay Johnson, and Christian Gray, your weakest secondary member is Christian Gray, and I still have a lot of faith in Christian Gray at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Like you wouldn't have thought that watching that game Saturday. So Indy Forever 72. Did you drink any ICs or IC lights, any of the Iron City beer while you were in Pittsburgh?
That's what the guy bought me next to me. He bought me some free IC beers.
When I was in Germany, one of my buddies, he's from Pittsburgh, and he went home on leave, and he somehow, I don't know how he got it. It was a lot different back then. This is in the 80s and early 90s, but I don't even know how he brought like a 12-pack of IC Light back to Germany with him from Pittsburgh. And it was like, well, it's got a fun little name, but it's not like it's not one that I would keep partaking in year after year. Jeremiah Love, you got to, I don't know how much higher his stock can go. We're going to talk about him in rapid fire, though. 167 total yards, and you've probably seen that graphic that's going around social media, where at one point he had more total yards than Pittsburgh's offense, and if not for that last touchdown drive, he probably would have ended up with more yards than Pittsburgh's total offense for the day.
Yeah, like Notre Dame, that's the thing, is like Notre Dame, I say this every game, Notre Dame's left points on the board at the end of the day. I think the only thing that was a Shamrock down was the 4th down rub route to Raritan that didn't complete. That was probably my Shamrock down on the day. I think what another big offense, there's really no more Shamrock ups, in my opinion. I think when we're talking about Shamrock up at this point in the season, we're talking defensively. I thought Burnham had a really good day as well.
He did. He was on my list as well. 2 sacks. I mean, the guy, I think with him, as Marcus Freeman has talked about, it's been just a matter of getting healthy and staying healthy. And as Josh Burnham gets healthier, man, he is just a wrecking crew out there at times. And like there were a couple different, he came close to a couple other sacks that he could have had. But he looks good.
How do you feel about Malachi Fields? Did he move anywhere for you?
That's a good one. I think, like when you especially look at that first catch, it's like, man, how did he even make that catch? Like watching that live, did you think that he actually caught it? Do you remember?
No, I do remember it. No, I did not think he caught it. I didn't kind of realize the gravity of the catch until he actually caught it. Like I knew he kind of went up and it was going to be a hard catch, but I didn't realize how great of a catch it was until it was ruled that he officially caught it. What I like about Malachi Fields is he's turning into that guy who can go up and get a ball. A guy who can go high point of football.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not just over the shoulder, kind of, dropping the ball in the bucket. He can go up and get you a ball, and I think that's going to turn to be important in the playoffs.
Josh, given you a little props for your Fields prognostications against the Panthers.
Thank you.
It's just, CJ Carr can't do that all the time. It's not like he can just lock in on Malachi Fields all the time, but it does feel like maybe you need to start looking that direction just a little more often and give him more opportunities to do that kind of stuff because his ball skills are so special.
Every 2nd down and 2 should really be kind of a jump ball to Malachi Fields.
Feels like it. Yeah.
Hit a play action shot.
And again, this is not like I'm dropping CJ Carr's, Shamrocks from a level 10 to a level 2. Don't get me wrong, but he did throw 2 interceptions.
A pick 6.
One of them was a pick 6, and the other could have been a pick 6, like the way that.
Yeah, like I didn't want to come on here and bash CJ Carr because he did do a lot of good things.
We've got to ding him.
But if you look at the stat line, it's not the most pretty thing in the world. The 2 interceptions really stick out, in my opinion.
And when you look at his season on the whole, 5 of his 6 interceptions have come against Miami, Texas A&M, USC, Pittsburgh. 4 ranked
best teams.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that there's some self-scout that Notre Dame probably needs to be doing. And, I don't know how much of it is maybe, opposing defensive coordinators recognizing something in CJ Carr and maybe something they can capitalize on. But again, when you have a guy like Malachi Fields, it feels like that can take some of the thinking process out maybe for CJ Carr. When in doubt, look for Malachi and give him the chance to go up and get one. Doesn't it seem like it?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, you have one of the bigger, like he's an NFL wide receiver. He's got the frame, he's got the vertical, he's got the, the speed, all of that stuff. I think at times CJ Carr can just utilize, I know I have one-on-one here, let my guy go make a play, basically.
The most discouraging thing, I think, as well, is like that goal line short yardage offense continues.
Still can't figure it out.
They have no answers. No answers right now. Well, I guess they've got one answer. It's
the quarterback
follow. Yeah, where Jeremiah Love is the lead blocker. I guess that's the answer right now.
But, I mean, CJ Carr is athletic enough to do it, and you saw how Riley Leonard was so effective last year, so you might as well just do it. I'm still going to stick to my conspiracy that Mike Denbrock is saving all of his short yardage plays for the playoffs.
Not showing anything right now.
Not putting anything on film. Nope, nothing on film.
Saving all the good stuff because of all these scrub teams that Notre Dame's been playing.
Well, it's just really frustrating because you listen to like anyone who watches a lot of like Troy Aikman, Joe Buck, Tony Romo, Jim Nantz, like they all talk about how you have to be every week. You have to have new short down plays.
Yeah,
you can't. You got and I don't know what it is because it's really frustrating. I don't know if it's a lack of, if it's laziness, if it's they truly think just because they have a good offensive line in Jeremiah Love that they can just run at will. But nothing is working in the short yardage situation, and I've not seen anything overly creative that suggests that it's going to be fixed. But I know how creative Mike Denbrock is, and I know how good of the personnel Notre Dame has. Like, they could do so much more than what they're doing. Like, Mark Andrews, for example, the other night, the Ravens got in their short down situation, and Mark Andrews got under center, and then he reversed out and hit a sideline run and scored a touchdown. Like, How is there none of that? How is there's just no creativity? And so I know that they're smarter than that, and so I have to believe that they're saving it for the playoffs.
Okay. I mean, it's maybe wishful thinking, but I guess we'll find out. John says in the YouTube chat, why don't we try some toss sweeps to try to get Love and Price around the edge more? And that is something, like you called for the counters, and that's something that was successful, especially early in the game. They were doing some counter stuff with Jeremiah.
Well, the first play of the game was technically considered a counter.
Yeah, but my point is they never really tested that edge in that way. Like, it didn't feel like.
I felt like I felt as if Notre Dame felt as if they didn't have to. They were running well enough inside.
Yeah. So again, like, why show what you don't have to show? Maybe, some of that kind of stuff. Why? I don't know. It felt like there was more there, even if they wanted, but again, like the short yardage stuff, like if you're half a foot or a foot away from the goal line and like that's your play, like that just, it doesn't make sense to me. It makes no sense.
I wish they get under center as well, because then you could hard play action.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of different things that they could be doing, but
and that's what I mean. But they go out there and do the most basic plays.
Right. And I mean, your rationale would make sense, although it does seem strange that you would go an entire season and like, let's just run the bad plays. Let's run the bad plays because we don't want to show anybody anything at the end of the year. It just feels like, no, it is not working. DJ says, no, not under center. And it's, I'm a little like, do we really need, to go under center? I don't think so. I feel like there's a lot, like just
but
some of
there's
the
no
motion,
true play action.
Some of the motion, yeah, like the motion stuff is what's really lacking still, and like the like even a fake jet sweep, whatever it happens to be. We've talked about 21 personnel type stuff, so you've got 2 running backs on the field, but they don't really seem like that's the kind of stuff that they want to go to. So I don't know. I think 21 personnel is always going to kind of be the white whale for all of us. So, all right, we will take a timeout. When we come back, it's rapid fire time. We've got a lot of Jeremiah Love talk in rapid fire, some other stuff as well, some coaching stuff going on around the country. Lane Kiffin, of course, James Franklin, all that and more coming up. Rapid fire, hour 2, Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. It is hour number 2 of Budweiser's Weekday Sportsbeat with IrishBreakdown.com. Glad to have you with us here tonight. I'm Sean Stiers along with Jesse Stiers. And are you ready for rapid fire?
It is that time.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So after Jeremiah Love's 56-yard touchdown run against Pittsburgh Saturday, ESPN's Adam Rittenberg tweeted, "Has anyone delivered more Heisman-like plays than Jeremiah Love?" So my question to you, with 2 games to go, scale of 1 to 10, what is your confidence Jeremiah Love gets an invite to the Heisman Trophy ceremony?
I'm going to go, I wish I could say 10 out of 10, but I'm going to go a solid 9.5 out of 10. I think Jeremiah Love has slowly crept into kind of that top 5, top 4, top 3 area. As of recent, I think he's getting a lot more national attention. Like you see a lot more national writers, reporters, people like us, podcasters who are saying his name publicly and basically saying that he deserves to be in that ceremony. And he's done nothing but put on highlight plays ever since the USC game. So I think this is pretty much a given. I think he's going to be one of the Heisman finalists.
Yeah, Scott wants to know how many are invited to New York. It is either 3 or 4, and what differentiates, whether they do 3 or 4, it's how close the voting is. So they're like, if there is a big drop-off from number 3 to number 4, the number 4 guy does not get an invite. But if 1 through 4 are all, within whatever, number, they will they will invite 4 guys to the Heisman ceremony in New York. So I think that it is this is my prediction right now. I think it's going to be Fernando Mendoza from Indiana. I think it's going to be Julian Sayin from Ohio State. And I think it's going to be Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame, because I think that, kind of what you said, piggybacking on that, I think that there has been a lot of attention starting to go Jeremiah Love's way. And it starts with, and this is something that I said in the offseason, is that for Jeremiah Love to have a legitimate shot at the Heisman, he needed a lot of these highlight type plays. And what have we seen these last 3 weeks? You saw the 90-plus yard touchdown run against Boston College. Then you saw the big highlight run against Navy 2 weeks ago. And then last week, you saw the 56-yard touchdown run early in the game against this supposed, great Pitt run defense. Statistically, they were great, number 3 in the nation, but Jeremiah Love busts that up, and he ends up with 147 yards and almost 170 total yards. But I think that people nationally are really recognizing the importance that Jeremiah Love has for this offense and what he means for this offense. The fact that he's over 1,100 yards now, 17 total touchdowns that he's got. I think that people are recognizing it. So my prediction, Mendoza, Sayin, and Jeremiah Love end up being at least, I think that they will be the top 3 vote getters. Whether or not a 4th guy gets in there, I don't know. But I think that those are the 3 that I feel the most confident in. So my confidence right now is maybe a little bit less than yours, 8.5. To answer my own question, my confidence is 8.5 that Jeremiah Love ends up getting a Heisman invite, ends up one of the top 3 Heisman vote getters.
If Jeremiah Love doesn't get the invite, I think we officially can call the Heisman the best quarterback in the country award, because
I think so too.
At that point, what are we doing? And I think Robin Pipcorn says the winner is going to come from the Ohio State and Indiana Big Ten championship game. How do you feel about that? I think that's largely true.
Could happen. I mean, that's gonna. I'm pretty sure that. I mean, that is I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, that is definitely before the Heisman ceremony. So yeah, that could sway a lot. Let me ask you this though. Does the 10:30 p.m. Eastern time kickoff that Notre Dame has at Stanford in their regular season finale, do you think it has any impact on Jeremiah Love's Heisman hopes? This is the question that was posed in the YouTube chat last night that we didn't get to.
I don't think it helps it. I don't know if it'll negatively impact it, but I don't think it helps it by any means, because Notre Dame is going to be the last game to end that night potentially. And so who's going to be awake watching Notre Dame potentially be blowing out Stanford at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning? So, I think that if Jeremiah Love is going to get busy in that game, he better do it in the first couple quarters before everyone goes to bed.
Yeah, for sure. I think social media takes care of a lot of this, though. I think that 15 years ago, having the late kickoff.
Yeah, because if anything that happens, they'll post it. You'll see the highlight the next day.
Exactly. So like I don't think that it's like, could it have some impact? Yeah. But the other side of this is, like, media types don't mind this 10:30 game. Like a lot of guys who actually cover college football and have Heisman votes. And someone asked, no, I don't have a Heisman vote. I'm not sure if anyone on the Notre Dame beat has a Heisman Trophy vote. I'll have to ask around and see if I can poll, like if like Eric or Priester or any of those guys have a Heisman Trophy vote, or Sampson, like any of those guys who have been around and writers. And obviously former Heisman Trophy winners are also part of the voting pool as well. But the media types, like, they like this old Pac-12 after dark time slot, this 10:30 game, because they've been covering other games. Maybe they go back to the their hotels or wherever they are after the game, and they're down in a couple cold ones or their bourbon or whatever it happens to be, and they've got the TV on and they're watching this game, so there's virtually nobody else playing. So even though it's not the traditional primetime slot, there's really no other competition in there, in terms of what it's going up against. So it's still a standalone game, even though it's on later and a lot of media types are watching. So I don't think it has any negative impact. ND Sailor says Tim O'Malley has a Heisman vote. All right. Interesting.
Who do you think is more deserving, the linebacker from Texas Tech or Jeremiah Love?
Well, it's Jeremiah Love.
Okay. I was curious.
I mean, the linebacker from Texas Tech is very good. I actually cast my vote for the Lot Impact Award today. My email had been getting bombed for the last week by these people from the Lot Impact Trophy. And at first I thought, like, is this legit? Is this, because it's like the email address that it came from was not, it wasn't like so-and-so at Lot Trophy or Lot Impact or whatever. But I kept getting hit over and over. Hey, there's still time to cast your vote. So I finally cast my vote today. So Leonard Moore, you got one from me up at the top of the ballot there. Texas.
For anyone that doesn't know,
Texas Tech linebacker on the ballot, but I did not vote for him.
Is presented annually to the Defensive College Football Player of the Year for their personal character and athletic abilities.
Yeah. Yeah. The Texas Tech, why can't I think of his name off the top of it? Is it
Jacob Rodriguez?
I was thinking Rodriguez. Yeah. He probably going to win the Butkus.
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
There's no way he doesn't win the Butkus.
Yeah, exactly. So Jeremiah Love, speaking of him, after the win over Pittsburgh, he talked about how the Panthers had a lack of respect for Notre Dame. He was asked about that. Here's what he had to say.
Me personally, I feel like there was a little bit. I feel like they didn't respect us. They didn't really talk about how aggressive we were as a team. They didn't really talk about how much we were basically just dominators. It was kind of a little bit disrespectful. They had a lack of respect for us, but didn't use it for motivation. I really could care less what anybody else's think. Just gonna go out there and do my thing. But looking back, was a little bit of lack of respect.
All right. So lack of respect, Jeremiah Love says. And I don't know if you saw any of the videos of Emil Wagner, with his big fiery speech. He is, he's kind of become the new Pat Coogan, it looks like, for the Notre Dame offensive line. But apparently he was barking a lot about disrespect and something, those kind of things. Take the fan equation out of this, like what fans think of Notre Dame. I'm just talking about other teams, coaches, that kind of thing. Do you think this respect thing in regards to Notre Dame is widespread, or is this mostly a Pittsburgh thing. You can probably throw Joey McGuire in Texas Tech because he had the comments last week as well. Do you think this is widespread, or do you think it's fairly localized to a handful?
So here's what I'll say, and I think this is the best way to sum this up. I think teams that have played Notre Dame since Brian Kelly has left, specifically in the last year, maybe 2 years, I'm talking Georgia, IU, Penn State, USC, Texas A&M, they have respect for Notre Dame. They know how Notre Dame – Kirby Smart has respect for Notre Dame. I know that for a fact. Teams that are envious of Notre Dame and wish they could be Notre Dame have a lack of respect for Notre Dame. Pat Narduzzi has a lack of respect for Notre Dame and his entire team, right, because he won't say that he's jealous and he wishes that he could be Notre Dame. And so the thing that you can do in turn is just be a hater. And I think that's what it boils down to. I think that the true college football saviants, where I'm talking the Signettis, savants, the Kirby Smart, the, like guys who know ball, basically, at the end of the day, have results, have been to meaningful games, have played meaningful games, have won meaningful games. They respect Notre Dame. Teams that want to be in Notre Dame's shoes but quite aren't there, I don't think they have respect for Notre Dame.
So you're saying it's widespread then. So there are the teams that matter probably have the respect for Notre Dame. You go down that list, and I think that you could throw Clemson in there as well.
I still think you could put Ohio State on that list.
Yeah, but regardless or not of whether or not Notre Dame has beaten them, I think that there is respect because they see where the program has come and what it is right now, and the job that Freeman,
the toughness,
has done. Yeah, the physicality, the toughness, the speed, the athleticism, all of the above. The way they go about their game. So, again, that is a very small percentage, though. Texas Tech has not played Notre Dame, for example. They, he would rather complain about them not being in a conference, so that Notre Dame could go to, all those really, rough and tumble places like Kansas and Kansas State and, Stillwater, all those tough Big 12 locales that you have to go into when you're part of the Big 12 just because you're in a conference. And it's the same with Narduzzi, he doesn't think it's an even playing field. It's like Notre Dame has smoked the ACC. It's like since this whole ACC scheduling agreement, that's like the other side, people complaining that Notre Dame's schedule is too soft because they're beating up on all these ACC teams, and ACC teams, mostly guys like Pat Narduzzi, are mad because Notre Dame isn't there as if Notre Dame is getting some kind of benefit from that. So I agree. I think that the coaches and the teams that actually matter have a lot of respect for Notre Dame, but I do think that there is pretty widespread, disrespect for Notre Dame because most of these other coaches, because 99.9% of everyone else is in a conference and they think this is what we have to do, so everybody should have to do what we have to do. And so they hold that against a program like Notre Dame. So, I think it is pretty widespread, but you also have very minor vocal minorities who actually bring it up the way it was brought up last week from time to time.
Thing is, though, is Notre Dame has played probably the most powerful teams this season. And so while they're not in a conference, they don't get to play an FCS and FBS team 2 or 3 times per season. It's just simple as that.
That's exactly right. In that thing that Jen Cohen put out last week from USC, she trumpeted them, USC for being the only FBS team that has never played an FBS program. And that is something to commend. And that to me was why it was so unfortunate, I thought, that Notre Dame played Tennessee State a couple of years ago.
Yeah, they needed to stay off that list.
Yeah, that they were one of the last holdouts, and then they played Tennessee State, and now you can't that was always ammunition that Notre Dame had. We've never played an FCS school. Well, okay, now you can say we've only played one FCS school ever, but still, the list is down to 1 now, and that's USC. USC still kind of has that out there that that they've never played an FCS. And I understand why Notre Dame did it, because you went to Dublin, You played Navy. You came back. You didn't want to have a bye week in week 2 like you had this week. So basically, you scheduled a team that, and they made it a historically, black, institution as well, so they kind of packaged that in there and that whole thing. But I still was just not a fan of it. So Josh says USC did have an FCS team scheduled in 2020, but canceled. Well, but they still never played them. So they've still got that they can hold out there, regardless of if they had one scheduled or not. So kind of on this same subject, do you buy or sell the idea, this new narrative that has popped up, that teams are not giving Notre Dame their best when they play the Irish?
No, and this is just the most idiotic storyline I've ever heard, or clickbait, or whatever you want to call it, because no athletic director and head coach is going to go into a game against Notre Dame, let alone the brand, the name, all of that, and then you consider them as a top 10 team in the country. No one is going to walk into that game and say, actually, let's rest our guys. Let's not win this game. Let's not be like NIU, Marshall, Stanford. It's just completely ridiculous, because at the end of the day, you play to win every game. And to me, it's kind of like, everyone talks about being, and Pat Narduzzi said it. People kind of view Notre Dame as the college version of America's team. And so you're always going to get their best shot because they're Notre Dame. And then when you add in that they're a top 10 team, that's like doubling down on it of why you should want to beat them. So there's just no way that I'm buying this narrative that teams are suddenly just going to not play their best or whatever it is against Notre Dame.
The Chuck Todd, Dan Lebitard, like this whole narrative, like these are all Miami fans that are spewing this idiocy. Like they're looking for anything that they can cling to, because they're all just so upset. And they're so hurt because Miami remains behind Notre Dame in the rankings, despite that head-to-head win. And obviously Notre Dame is ahead of them because of the fact that in spite of that win, first game of the season, first time starting quarterback, all those things that, like they still have all these other metrics working in their favor. For example, they're playing better much more recently, but like it's not the first, like Navy sitting down Blake Horvath. Well, Navy does still have conference games that they have to play in the month of November, and they still have an outside shot at making the college football playoff. And so if he was banged up, which they said that he was, why would they start him in a non-conference game, regardless of if it's Notre Dame or anyone else? Like Pittsburgh, Narduzzi gave them a reason not to play. Like if they wanted a reason, Narduzzi gave it to them. But game after game after game, year after year, like, do you think that Boston College wasn't playing their hardest against Notre Dame? Like they gave Notre Dame everything they got. And like all the Navy gave everything, all they got, like they're like that quarterback who was playing in place of Horvath. It's not like he was just relaxing out there. Like that was his opportunity. It was his chance to show what he can do. And that's what it is for all of these teams. It's like for a lot of these schools, they don't get on national TV all the time. Like even Texas A&M, for as good as they are this year, they're not going to get the same kind of spotlight as they got for a primetime game at Notre Dame Stadium. So it's complete bunk to think that teams aren't given their best when they play Notre Dame. These are all just, spoiled babies who are mad and, want to go home with their ball because they're mad and they have a particular agenda. And the agenda is Notre Dame is ranked ahead of their team, and so they're clinging to any scrap that they can get to try to use against Notre Dame.
I really respect Lebitard, and I like listening to his show, but he needs to leave the Miami commentary out of it because he's just too emotionally charged up.
He is. And
it's too emotionally charged up.
Yeah.
And so when you do this, I lose respect and credibility for you. Not saying that, my opinion is holier than thou or better than thou or any of that, but the committee has said what they said. And now you don't need to be spewing fake storylines just to make yourself feel better about why Miami is behind Notre Dame or why Notre Dame continues to win games because teams are resting their players. Navy didn't play Horvath this last weekend and beat South Florida. That should tell you everything you need to know.
Exactly. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, more rapid fire. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We're right in the middle of some rapid fire along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. Hope you're having a great night tonight. Don't forget, Notre Dame Syracuse kickoff at 3:30 at Notre Dame Stadium on the Notre Dame Radio Network, the Odyssey app, AUDACY, Odyssey.com. The game day show, 11 a.m. to 2:30 at the Linebacker. You can join Tim, Eric, and Tyler over there, and they will have all of your game day essentials leading up to Notre Dame and Syracuse on Senior Day.
Something interesting I just saw on the break. Last week, people asked one of the questions, I think one of the mailbag questions was what we do when we go to break. I always just mess around on my phone, usually on Instagram. But I thought this was coincidental. We were talking about Shamrock Up, Shamrock Down, which basically is like stock up, stock down.
Right.
The Senior Bowl down there in Mobile, Alabama, posted Senior Bowl Offensive Stock Up Player of the Week, Malachi Fields.
Ooh, I like it. I like it. Good for him. All right.
So we talked about stock up. We talked about Malachi Fields a little bit. Looks like he's getting that recognition, and he to me is like the perfect player to go down to the Senior Bowl.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Andre had this question in earlier, and I forgot it was in there, so I thought I'd bring it out right now. He's in the YouTube chat. If Notre Dame does not make the college football playoff because of the head-to-head of Miami, do you think this would cause Notre Dame to think about joining a conference?
No. They knew kind of their path. I think always being at 2 losses is going to put them kind of on the bubble. I think 1 loss will always get them in. Obviously, being undefeated will always get them in. 3 losses is a sure way out with no conference affiliation. But 2 losses is always going to put them on the bubble, and they knew that when they, came up with the new agreement at the playoff expansion.
Yeah, and I mean it's one time, and so as you said, you lose twice, you're gonna be in a tenuous spot, no matter what. That's just gonna happen. Anyone with 2 losses is gonna be pretty close to the cut line. Now, obviously, you're seeing more teams with 2 losses, so it's it gets a little bit dicier. But the other side of this is you're not going to make a decision like that because of one time you missed the playoffs. They're going to expand the playoffs here within the next few years, whether it's 16 or beyond that. It's going to end up expanding, So like Notre Dame is not just going to jump ship because you missed a 12-team college football playoff once, because within the next 3 or 4 years, once the new college football playoff contract is done, there's going to be probably at least 16 teams that are in the field. So Notre Dame's going to be fine. I'm still pretty confident they're going to end up getting in this year. But as we said in the first hour, they don't totally control their own destiny because of all these other things happening around them, with other teams. They're just going to be right there close to the cut line. If they're 9 or better when these rankings come out tonight, I feel really confident they're going to end up.
Same. That's exactly where I'm at as well. If you're at 9, I'd put their chances to make the playoff like 9 out of 10.
Yeah, exactly. You get to 10, I think that you're like 6 at best, like if we're grading scale of 1 to 10, because again, that means that Oklahoma has moved ahead of you. And it also means that probably Miami is starting to creep up on you a little bit, and you're going to be more compared to them. And they obviously have that head-to-head victory. But you're also a big Pittsburgh fan in a couple of weeks. Kind of crazy that Miami and Pittsburgh are closing the regular season against each other in rivalry weekend. Blah. Come on. Fill in the blank. Virginia Tech hiring James Franklin as its head coach is blank.
It's a home run on a lot of levels. And I think the main reason it's a home run is Virginia Tech is a well-known program with a rich history, probably not as rich as Penn State, but is in the current kind of need of a rebuild. And I think James Franklin is the perfect guy for that. It's still a Power 4 school. I think the ACC is an easier conference than the Big Ten. It still has a lot of roots. James Franklin predominantly recruits the state of Virginia and the East Coast really well. So he's going to get a lot of guys to stay in their backyard and come to Virginia Tech. Like, I just think that there's really not a better fit. And I think the number one, the biggest reason why it's a fit is because, again, Virginia Tech has established itself. It has a rich history, but it's kind of a little bit of an overhaul down at James Franklin's perfect kind of rebuild, overhaul. Like, I put him in the same category as Brian Kelly, really, at the end of the day.
I mean, we've said a lot, on this show that basically James Franklin and Brian Kelly are the same guy, so all the reasons that you listed, it makes complete sense, especially for Virginia Tech. And I mean, like, when you look at Virginia Tech, this is the biggest hire that they've ever made for that program. I realize that Frank Beamer put Virginia Tech on the map, but when they hired Frank Beamer way back when, they were a completely off the map program. Like, you knew Frank Beamer because he's the one that brought Virginia Tech to to whatever prominence that they had. Like Michael Vick was, probably the peak of that, obviously. But now, like, this is the biggest name head coach that Virginia Tech has ever hired. He's a guy who was just in the college football playoff semifinals last year. And as you said, he's got a track record now of building programs. Like, he, built Virginia Tech, made the move to Penn State, and then Penn State, because, like, even before Bill O'Brien and even before everything that happened at the end of Joe Paterno's tenure there, like, they had dropped down. They had hit a lull, and he brought them back and got them consistently winning. So it's a home run hire for Virginia Tech. It's interesting that Franklin made this move because of all that money in the buyout that he was owed by Penn State. And apparently, like, it's going to drop from, like 40 whatever million that it was, down closer to $9 or $10 million because of the money, the offset that he's going to be getting at Virginia Tech. So it's like hey, you fired me, but Merry Christmas, Penn State. You're getting all this money back on the back end because you don't owe me all this on the buyout because I'm taking this job at Virginia Tech. So he wanted to coach, and, everybody's happy, it sounds like.
Honestly, I think it's the most respectful thing that James Franklin has done. To me, it shows all he cares about is ball. He wants to get his nose back into the grind, and he wants to prove everyone wrong and make Penn State look like idiots for firing him. I don't think the money cares. I think winning is what matters to James Franklin. And again, say what you want about him. I know he didn't win big games, but I do think he works extremely hard. I do think he's a good coach.
A lot different work ethic than BK. Like, that's the biggest difference.
That's what I mean. I respect him because I think he recruits harder and he coaches harder and he cares more about the players than Brian Kelly ever did.
Correct. And that was something that struck me, like in that video that they had when they lost that, was it the Oregon game or I don't think it was, whatever his last game was before they fired him, when he was out there on the field and, hugging and, with the players and stuff like that, waiting for each of them to come off the field. I think that there was that's a lot different now. His personality, as he intermixes with other people, that's a little bit different as well. ND Saylor in the YouTube chat says Penn State thinks they'll get Clark Lee. I mean, it's really amazing when you look at it. We're going to talk about Lane Kiffin here in a minute, but Penn State, LSU, Florida, they all fired their head coaches looking for the next, better thing. And, Cignetti was the first to go off the board when he signed his contract extension. Matt Rule, not, that long after, signed his contract extension. Like, honestly, Clark Lee is probably the best option that Penn State is going to find at this point. Don't you think? Like, in terms of guys who are legitimate potential candidates for a job like that?
Yeah, I think that Clark Lee is definitely on top of the list. I just don't know who's actually going to leave and go to Penn State at the end of the day. Like, I think Penn State thinks they're this, coveted, everyone should be flocking to come to Penn State. But, like, at the end of the day, I think that they need to be looking for a guy like Kurt Cignetti, a guy who's kind of, made his way, like, he's trending and he's kind of made his way through college football, maybe. And I'm not saying Cignetti is like a name unknown, but, like, I just don't think that Penn State's going to go out there and get like a Marcus Freeman, a Lane Kiffin type name. I think you got to look for a guy a little bit more under the radar that I don't know. I don't see them getting this big name like they think they are.
Right. Scott in the YouTube chat says Franklin's contract required him to seek employment. True. And, he says, and this is true, except any offer of employment. That's why Penn State had him over a barrel and negotiated the buyout down. But the other side of that, though, Scott, is knowing this, James Franklin could have told Virginia Tech, all you have to do is pay me $1 million a year because I've got all this money still coming from Penn State. So, like, there's offset money in it. So, like, the buyout comes down because of what Virginia Tech is paying him as well. So he could have said, look, you can hire me. You don't have to give me big bucks because I still got, money coming from Penn State. But, they handled it all the way around, is what I'm saying. So let's take our final break, some Lane Kiffin talk, and we will wrap up rapid fire. Coming up next, Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Winding down Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com and Rapid Fire, along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. Got another rapid fire question or two to go here. Fill in the blank. Ole Miss giving Lane Kiffin a reported ultimatum, even though he denied this ultimatum, to decide his future before the November 28th Egg Bowl against Mississippi State is blank. Now, I don't know if you heard, as I said, Kiffin was on the McAfee show today, and he denied that there is any ultimatum. So take that what you will.
Yeah, Ole Miss is not happy that the ultimatum got leaked, is what it sounds like.
Kiffin is not happy that the ultimatum got leaked.
So I would say that Ole Miss giving him that ultimatum is bold. That would be my word, bold. Because, and the reason why I say it's bold is because Ole Miss is going to make the playoffs, and they're going to have their most legit chance at a national championship run in ever, ? Like, I don't know when the last time Ole Miss has had this good of a chance at a national championship. Everything is in front of them technically at the end of the day. So why you're giving your coach an ultimatum and not allowing him to kind of see the fruits of his labor?
Why would you want to jeopardize your program's chance to win a national championship?
Right.
So you want an answer, but you're going to be in the playoff most likely. Like, barring some catastrophic slide by Ole Miss here in these next couple of weeks, like, you're going to be in the college football playoff for the first time ever. Why would you want to put an ultimatum like that on your head coach? So let's say his decision is, I want to go to Florida or LSU. So you want him to leave in the middle of a playoff run? Like, is that what you're saying? You want your team to have an interim coach while you're playing in the most important games in the history of your program? It seems asinine to me.
Yeah, it's bold, it's silly, it's quite frankly stupid. So if I were Lane Kiffin, I would say, listen here, I'm in the driver's seat. You let me coach these games, and then we'll talk after the last regular season game, whenever that might be. So I just think it's quite crazy. I bet Lane Kiffin loves it. You know how he is.
I do too. Like, I think that Lane Kiffin has a lot of Jerry Jones in him, to be
He
quiet.
loves the spotlight.
Yeah, he loves it to be right on him. And apparently, now, I don't know how much of this, again, reported, alleged, whatever ultimatum comes from the fact that there are some reports out there that Lane Kiffin and his family went on tours of both Gainesville and Baton Rouge in the last week or so. Like, they visited both areas, or, both cities.
I'm not buying that.
To check it out. Well, there were now again, there's some deep conspiracy stuff here, and I would have to, I was just
like plane trackers, right?
Yeah, like the plane trackers. But there was someone in Baton Rouge at the airport who has photographic evidence that they were there. So, again, make of it what you will. But with this stuff floating around, maybe you can see Ole Miss's point a little bit, but it just feels like, get to the end of the regular season, we can all take a breath a little bit. We can sit here and reassess it, because no matter what, this is definitely leverage that works in Lane Kiffin's favor as well. Like when it comes to Ole Miss. Go ahead.
I think this feels very kind of like high schooly, where there's a guy that maybe is starting to gain a little traction. He's handsome. He's the captain of the football team, and he's flirting around a little bit, and then one girl's like, it's either me or I'm out. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it kind of feels. It just feels like there's a bit of that, jealousy. You don't want people coming to you and saying, you see Lane's down in Gainesville,
right?
You see Lane's down in Baton Rouge,
right?
Because then the egg is back on your face.
Especially when it's people who matter. You don't
want
that kind of stuff going on. Yeah. I mean, it feels like, especially, look, I've been to Gainesville. I've seen, some of their facilities. I haven't been inside the facilities. Obviously, they've won a national championship. You have, I think, better access to, I think that you have better access to recruiting in both areas. But the thing is, you're in the same conference. and you're winning, and you have really good NIL backing at Ole Miss. And like he has said before, that he's comfortable there. So like if all these things are in your, working in your favor, you've obviously shown that you can win games. Like, I don't know. He's obviously much closer, but like outside looking in, we talked about that LSU situation with everything that happened and, like trying to go back on the buyout with Brian Kelly. Like that just doesn't seem like a situation that I would want to be in if I'm a guy like Lane Kiffin or any other prominent coach for that matter.
I agree.
Bernie from the YouTube chat wants to know the best food that you ate in Pittsburgh while you were there. Did you get a local fare?
Not a lot of food was concerned. I had some sort of sandwich at halftime.
Mostly liquid calories is what you're saying?
Yes. Orange juice is the best thing I had.
All right. I got a nice Chicago Foursquare from Buddy's while I was in Detroit. Have you ever had Buddy's Detroit style pizza?
I've had Detroit style pizza. I did not have Buddy's. I'm actually a big fan of Detroit style pizza because I think it's the kind of in between like thin crust and the traditional deep dish pizza in Chicago.
We're gonna have to wrap up here pretty quick. You've had Primanti Brothers before, haven't you?
Yes, it was
last year.
Primanti Brothers though.
Oh, similar but not Primanti. Okay. All right. He's Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. We're going to have to wrap it up with that mailbag night tomorrow night. So we'll be taking Notre Dame football questions from listeners, and we'll obviously know more about the college football playoff rankings. We'll do that tomorrow. Great show tonight. Appreciate all the input in the chat. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.